Okay, so we're ready to start writing the code for this, but the first thing to do is establish the template, the RSS feed template. Now this is going to need to be a valid RSS template, which you can grab from most places, but in this case, you may want to just copy it straight from the video. Essentially, we're going to have to tweak this a little bit, and we're also going to have to be really careful about how we output our data, because we're keeping strictly with UTF-8 content encoding. So basically, we don't just output our data, we need to consider what we're outputting and make use of some useful PHP functions as well. So it sounds boring, but don't worry, it's not too bad. Let's go ahead and just paste this template in. As I said, if you haven't already got anything like this, then go ahead and copy it from the video. We will be validating our overall feed at the end using the W3C RSS feed validator. Extremely important that it's valid. So we've got our feed.php file. Now we've got a couple of problems. Let's take a look at initially what happens if we run this. Now normally if this was HTML it would be fine. We could just run this code and it would output. But let's go ahead and refresh, and we see we get a parse error here on line 1. Now this looks a bit odd, but if we take a look at the code carefully, we can see why. This is a short PHP tag, and this has been enabled on my server, the server that I'm using. So basically this is being interpreted as a PHP tag, and therefore this is the parse part of the parse error because we have an unexpected string. So how can we get around this? Well, instead of going ahead and disabling short tags, it's a lot easier to just open some PHP tags and then echo this out within single quotes, like so. So we've opened a PHP tag and we've echoed the short tag, the rest of this, and then we've ended it. So this has nothing to do with PHP at all, this part here. It's just the way we open this XML tag here. So now what's going to happen is when we go over to our browser and refresh, it works. So you can see at the moment we've got this title displayed, this description displayed, and this is the description for this site and the title for the site. Then we've got item title, which linked through to phpacademy.org, and we've got the item description. Now what we need to do is we need to actually change this so we loop through our database and output certain things. So let's go ahead and take a look at our database. We've already seen this in the last video, but we've got loads of articles that we can just loop through and output. So the first stage is to connect to our database. So let's go ahead and do that. So above here, let's go ahead and open this. We can even combine these, so we don't need to do that. Okay, so first thing to do is connect to our database. So let's go ahead and create a variable called DB, and this is going to be a new MySQLi object. We pass through 4 parameters. The first is the server, second is the username password, which I haven't set here, and then the database. So in this case it's website, you can see here. So the next thing to do is then actually query the database. So I'm going to create a query variable, and this is going to be db query, and in here I enter my query. So in this case it's going to be select articles.id. Let's go to the new line, so comma separate, articles.title, articles.timestamp, and that's it. So where are we selecting this from? From the articles table. We're then going to order this by articles.timestamp, and we're going to order that in descending order. Now we're also going to incorporate a limit here, and we're going to allow this to be specified in the URL, so as I mentioned in the previous video. But for now, let's go ahead and limit this to 10. Cool, so what we're going to do now? Well, we only want the rest of this code to execute if we have articles to actually display. If we don't have articles display, we're just going to give the a blank document back. There's no point in even looping through anything. So let's go ahead and create an if statement here. What we're going to do is we're going to end the if statement just down here underneath, so it opens some PHP tags, and I'm going to go ahead and just indent all of this just so it makes a bit more sense. So within our condition, we need to say db affected rows. So we're checking how many rows have been affected by the last executed query. In this case, if it's greater than or equal to 1, then we can go ahead and execute our code. We might want to say else, do something else, but I'm just going to leave this blank for now. So let's go ahead and test this. I'm going to go ahead and refresh. It looks like it's worked. So in this case, we know that we have returned some data. If I was to say limit 0, for example, there we go, we've got a blank page, so nothing has been returned. We can view the source and we see absolutely nothing. So we know that as long as data has been returned by this query, this will be run, basically. Cool, so now that we've done that, we want to go ahead and start to fill in these items. So we need to loop through these items. So let's go ahead and open some PHP tags here. And we'll also open some just here. And this is going to be a while loop, much like we do anytime we want to loop through some data. I'm going to go ahead and indent this as well. The formatting of the indentation of the output doesn't matter too much because the RSS reader will just interpret this code, as per the elements that it finds. So there's no need to worry about how neatly this actually comes out. So I'm going to set a variable called row equal to the associative array that we're going to fetch through from the query for every loop. So in this case, we're going to say query because we're now accessing, the object returned from this query. So we're accessing from the query variable, and we're saying fetch ASOC, which is an associative array. So for every loop, we're going to output one of these. Now, you've probably guessed that when we go back to our browser and we refresh now, we get 10 of these items output. But what we're not doing is inserting the title and the timestamp. Now, the description we don't have, so I'm just going to leave this blank for now. But you may have a description, or you might want to trim the body and put some of that in there as well. So I'm going to open some PHP tags inside of the title and then go ahead and echo row title. Okay, so now that we've done this, we're going to go ahead and build up some of the other data, including the timestamp, which has to be in a very, very specific format. So let's go back over to our code and we will start to change this. So for the link, this needs to be a link, ideally a permalink, back to the actual article. So I'm just going to say article / and then open up my PHP tags and then echo row ID. So this will be the ID of the article. Now for the publish date, we use the date function in PHP to convert the timestamp to a human readable date at least. So what we're going to do is again open PHP tags and we'll go ahead and echo out row timestamp, and then we'll just modify this. So we will wrap this in the date function, and the first argument specifies how this is formatted. Now we need to adhere to RFC 822 time format for it to be a valid RSS feed. So in this case, we can just put R. Now usually you would put things like D, M, Y, things like that, but we're just going to say R here, and we'll see how this affects. So let's go ahead and refresh. You can now see that these links have not been visited, and you can see at the bottom of the screen these have changed. So we've got different article IDs, and we've also got this lovely date that's been generated by this inbuilt RSS reader in Firefox. So you can see here that the R has generated this here, which is the RFC 822 format of date. So this can be read properly. Now let's go ahead and pass this into a RSS validator. So let's just bring this over here, and what we need to do is we need to go ahead and grab this source code. Let's go and get rid of that, and we'll validate by direct input. So let's go ahead and check this, and it says congratulations, this is a valid RSS feed. So that's good news. We've got a valid RSS feed, we've got the title coming through, the date properly, and the description if you choose to then place that in. So this will be read by any RSS feed. If it's a valid RSS feed, you've got no problem at all. The only other thing now to consider is actually setting a limit on this, a user-defined limit. So we can go limit equals 5, for example, and we're going to set a maximum limit. So if they decide they want to obtain 100 articles, this might be, too much load on our server. So we can limit this to 30. So we'll be considering that as well, and we'll do this in the next part of the tutorial. We'll also change our Apache configuration to allow RSS files to be interpreted with PHP code inside of them.